The 40th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. Is just around the corner. This game cemented the character of Mario we know and love. However, Mario's history actually goes back well before this classic NES title. I want to take a deep dive into the character of Mario and uncover who he was really intended to be and why he even existed in the first place. So picture this. It's the 1970s, you're a rookie designer in your late 20s, and your boss wants you to craft your first video game. However, the stakes are possible bankruptcy overseas. This is a scenario Shigeru Miyamoto was in 1981. Miyamoto was actually hired as an artist, not a programmer. He worked mainly on arcade designs, as opposed to game mechanics. Nintendo hired him just as they were entering the video game industry. At the time, the company was not globally recognizable. They found success with arcade titles in Japan, but if they wanted westward expansion, appealing to the US audience specifically was vital. Here was Nintendo's plan. They had developed an arcade shooting game called Radar Scope. It was something of a breakthrough in Japan upon its release in 1979, rivaling even Pac-Man's popularity. If the gameplay looks familiar, it should, because Radar Scope was heavily inspired by Space Invaders, which was booming in popularity in the United States at the time. In this context, Nintendo's plan seems quite sound. Release Radar Scope in the United States and enter the Western market while riding the popularity of arcade shooters. Nintendo ordered 2,000 arcade cabinets to be shipped to the United States, which would set off Nintendo's bold new entrance into the West. The plan failed miserably, mainly due to two factors. Firstly, their cabinet's seaborne delivery was delayed, and they didn't arrive until months later. Secondly, and most importantly, many other companies had the same idea as Nintendo, and got there first. By the time Radar Scope arcades arrived, hundreds of Space Invaders clones had been launched, and that genre was oversaturated. Instead, Americans were more infatuated with titles that were new genres to them, such as Pac-Man and Defender. Because of this, only half the cabinets were sold, and Nintendo was left with 1,000 cabinets sitting in a warehouse in Redmond, Washington. The commercial success in Japan turned out to be a commercial failure in the United States. Here's where Miyamoto comes in. Then CEO of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, had hired Miyamoto partially because of his friendship with Miyamoto's father. Although having no experience designing games, Yamauchi saw that Miyamoto was creative and he could think differently. Yamauchi tasked him to design a new game to reuse the leftover cabinets. Yamauchi's vision for the game involved a recognizable character for Americans, Popeye the Sailor. So Nintendo requested the rights from King Features Syndicate and were promptly denied. Yamauchi essentially told Miyamoto to, quote, come up with something original then. Miyamoto wanted to retain the love triangle setup that Popeye had, with a hero, damsel, and an antagonist. He created Donkey Kong, Lady, and Jumpman, who would eventually become Mario. At this point, Miyamoto decided that Jumpman would be a carpenter by profession, and the game was named after its villain, Donkey Kong. Now, the name Jumpman reveals quite a lot about the innovation behind this game. Miyamoto did not want to make a shooter as had been the original plan. He wanted to try something new, which at the time was jumping over obstacles. It's relevant to note here that Miyamoto was involved in designing manga and cartoons before he entered Nintendo, and as such, he had a very keen eye towards visual character design. It was important to Miyamoto that the character be instantly recognizable, but the hardware limitations made this a challenge. You see, arcades usually only displayed characters made of 16 by 16 pixel sprites. Miyamoto decided the protagonist would wear a hat, as it was easier to make out than hair. He also decided on a mustache, as it was easier to animate than the mouth, and it made the nose visible, which he also made very large to create a more obvious face design. Finally, he gave Jumpman overalls because they made his arm movement clear in the animation. It's actually a complete coincidence that this character looks Italian, but the features came together and that's what we got. The introduction of the name Mario happened in the United States. Shortly after Donkey Kong machines had been put out in the US, Nintendo of America was formed in Washington State. Nintendo rented a warehouse from a man named Mario Segal. Now, I found a few stories on the internet that differ regarding why the American employees decided to rename Jumpman after Mr. Segal. One suggests that Nintendo was overdue on their rent payment, and so Segal stormed into the building in a rage demanding his payment. Apparently, the staff thought his look and fiery attitude matched the appearance of Jumpman, so they began calling Jumpman Mario as a joke. Another explanation says that Segal gave them a second chance to pay their money, and that the name was more of a commemoration, something of a thank you to him. Either way, the character was officially called Mario in Donkey Kong Jr. in 1982. In 1983, a new game was released, Mario Bros. This game shifted the setting to underground, with turtles climbing out of pipes. It was also the introduction of Mario's brother, Luigi. Miyamoto decided after the fact that his new environment would not be a place for carpenters to work, but instead plumbers. So, just like his name and ethnicity, Mario's profession was a result of the game design. So in a way, the answer to the question, who is Mario, is quite boring. He is simply the epitome of a video game character. His design is the result of technical limitations and happy accidents. Of course, he has been refined a bit over the decades, not just by Miyamoto, but also by his voice actors such as Captain Lou Albano and Charles Martinet. As of recording this video, we still don't know what the plans are for Mario's 40th anniversary. It is possible that we'll get a trailer for a new movie, or perhaps a collection of games, much like 3D All-Stars. But anyway, I just thought it would be very cool to remember why Mario exists, because if the things had turned out a little bit differently, he very well could never have existed at all. So thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. You don't have to, but I'm not gonna stop you. Anyway, have a good day. Have a fun time.